My name is Anna Blake, I'm 28 years old, and I've lived in Charleston, South Carolina my entire life. I'm a high school art teacher, the kind of person who tears up at student murals and still keeps every birthday card I've ever received. I'm engaged to a man named Nathan Wells, a software engineer from Boston, and in 3 months, we're supposed to get married in a small ceremony under the live oaks at Middleton Place. We met 2 years ago at a tech conference I was dragged to by a friend. Don't ask me why I was there, I still don't know. But Nathan walked into the hotel lobby with his glasses fogged from the humidity, holding a broken tablet and a spilled coffee, and I knew right then he was the kind of man who didn't try to be impressive. He just was. But this story isn't about falling in love. It's about what you do when love collides with the truth, and how a single photo can append everything you thought you knew about your past and your future. Before we go on, let me ask you something. Have you ever found something in your family that didn't quite add up? A photo, a letter, a name someone always avoided. So, you're not alone. I tell stories like this one every week. Raw, human, and real. So if you hit subscribe, I promise to bring you more than just drama. I'll bring you connection, answers, maybe even healing. Now, let's go back to Thanksgiving. It was our first holiday as an engaged couple, and my parents were over the moon excited. My mom had turned the dining room into a fall-themed explosion of candles, cinnamon-scented pine cones, and cloth napkins shaped like turkeys. My dad had carved the turkey with the same old electric knife he swore he hated every year. Jake, my younger brother, was home from grad school, and for once, nobody was arguing over politics or football. Nathan was seated next to me, holding my hand under the table like he always did when he was nervous. He adored my family, or so I thought. This was supposed to be a moment of joy, unity, the beginning of 2 families blending into one. After dinner, my mom brought out the wine and the dreaded family albums. She loved pulling them out at holidays, especially when we had guests. There were always embarrassing baby photos, wedding shots of relatives long gone, blurry snapshots of backyard BBQs in the 90s. Nathan smiled politely, flipping through the pages with mild amusement. Until he didn't. It happened halfway through the second album. My mom was pointing out a picture of her and my aunt in high school, laughing in puffy prom dresses, when Nathan's hand froze. His fork slipped from his fingers, clattering loudly against his plate. Everyone turned. But he didn't notice. He was staring at a photograph on the page. It was a candid shot, 3 women standing in front of an old blue Chevy, smiling. The photo was clearly from the early 90s, judging by the denim jackets and feathered hair. Nathan leaned in, then whispered, barely audible, "That's my mother. Why is she in your family album?" The room went still. I looked at the photo. My mom followed his gaze, eyes narrowing slightly, and then she went pale. "No," she murmured. "That can't be." But Nathan wasn't listening. He pointed at the woman in the middle. "Her name is Evelyn Wells. She's my mother. She died when I was 11. But that..." He tapped the photo again, voice rising. "That's her. I'd know her face anywhere." I looked between the 2 of them, my mother stunned and silent, and Nathan visibly shaking. "Mom," he asked, "who is that woman?" My mom sat down slowly, as if her legs couldn't hold her anymore. "I haven't seen her in over 25 years, she said, her voice brittle. "We used to be close." "You knew Evelyn Wells?" he asked. She hesitated. "No," she said. "Back then, she was Evelyn Miller." Nathan's face drained of all color. That was her maiden name. We didn't finish dessert. Nathan stood up, barely muttering an apology, and walked out the front door. I ran after him, my heart racing, the album still clutched in my hand. He was halfway down the driveway, pacing like he couldn't catch his breath. "She was your mom," I said softly. "And she used to know my mom. That doesn't have to mean anything." He turned to me slowly. "My mom never talked about her past. Ever. My dad said it was too painful. She cut ties with everyone when they moved up north. I thought she didn't have any family left. And now," he gestured toward the house, "she's in your album." With your family. And no one thought that was worth mentioning. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what it meant either. All I knew was that something had cracked open. And we couldn't unsee it. That night, Nathan didn't come home with me. He said he needed time to think, which I understood. But the way he said it, the way his voice shook, made it feel like we weren't just pausing. We were splitting apart, slowly, under the weight of a photo. I sat on the edge of my bed, the family album still in my lap. I stared at the picture over and over, trying to make it into something else. Coincidence? A misidentification? Maybe she just looked like Evelyn. Maybe grief was playing tricks on Nathan's memory. But deep down I knew the truth. That was Evelyn. And my mother had lied. The next morning I drove to my parents' house without calling. My dad answered the door in sweatpants and a confused squint. "Anna. Everything okay?" I pushed past him, heading straight for the kitchen. My mom was there, pouring coffee like nothing had happened. "We need to talk," I said. She didn't look surprised. She just sat down and nodded. I laid the album on the table and opened it to the photo. "You told me she was your friend," I said, my voice tight. "Evelyn Miller. But you never once mentioned her before last night. Why?" My mom stared at the picture for a long time. Her eyes didn't blink. "We were more than friends," she said finally. "We were inseparable. All three of us. Me, Evelyn, and your Aunt Sherry. That picture was taken the summer before everything changed." "What changed?" My mom looked away. "She left. That's it. She just left and you never saw her again." She hesitated, and I saw something flicker in her expression, shame. Or guilt. "She didn't just leave," she whispered. "She disappeared. Overnight. No note, no phone call. Her parents said she ran off with a man, but I knew something wasn't right. She wouldn't have left like that. Not without saying goodbye." "Did you try to find her?" "Of course I did. But this was before the internet. Before cell phones. I drove to every place we used to hang out. I even called hospitals. And stop. Because it hurt too much." I folded my arms. "So you never told me about her? Or mentioned that my fiancé's mother used to be part of your life?" She flinched at the word fiancé. "I didn't know Nathan was her son," she said. "How could I? You told me his last name was Wells." "That's not the name I knew her by." "It was her married name," I said. "You saw her face. You knew." She looked down. "I wasn't sure until last night. But once I saw him look at her, I knew it was her. And all I could think was, why now? Why is the past coming back now?" Later that day I called Nathan. He didn't pick up. I left a voicemail, then another. Then I drove to his place. When he opened the door, he looked like he hadn't slept. "I found out more," I said. "My mom knew her. She says Evelyn disappeared suddenly. No one heard from her again." Nathan let me in. He sat on the couch, staring at nothing. "My dad never said much about her past," he said. "She died when I was 11. Car accident. It was sudden. Closed casket. My dad barely spoke at the funeral. He moved us to Vermont 6 months later. I sat beside him. I'm not saying it means anything bad. But, don't you want to know why she left? Why no one ever looked for her?" He turned to me slowly. "Anna. Found something. Last night. After I got home." He stood and walked to his bedroom. When he came back he held a shoebox. Inside were letters, yellowed with age. Some unopened. Some torn. He handed me one. It was addressed to Sherry Collins, my aunt. "Where did you get these?" "In a trunk. I've had it for years. It was my mom's. I never really went through it before." I opened the letter carefully. It was dated October 1995. "Dear Sherry, if you're reading this, it means I'm desperate. I know I left too quickly, but I didn't have a choice. He said he'd hurt me if I told anyone. He said no one would believe me. Please don't trust him. Not around Anna. I know how that sounds. I know you think I'm overreacting. But I've seen what he's capable of. And if Anna's mother won't protect her, then you have to. Evelyn. I dropped the letter. The room spun. Anna, Nathan said, standing up. I don't understand, I whispered. What does that mean? Who is she talking about? Nathan was already opening the next envelope. Another letter. Another warning. And one word repeated over and over in both. My father's name. The letters lay on the floor like fragments of a bomb that had just gone off. Nathan and I stared at them in silence. The only sound in the room the faint ticking of his kitchen clock. Outside, the sky was gray, pressed low over the city like it knew something terrible was happening. She warned your aunt, Nathan said finally, voice hoarse. About your father. She said he was dangerous. I didn't answer. Couldn't. My hands were cold, my chest tight. I kept reading the same line over and over. If Anna's mother won't protect her, then you have to. That wasn't a vague statement. That was fear. That was a woman begging for someone to believe her. I don't understand, I whispered. My dad isn't, he's strict, sure. Conservative. But he's not dangerous. Nathan gently picked up another letter and handed it to me. He watched me. Followed me. I thought it was just jealousy, but then he started showing up at my job. He said Anna would never be safe if I stayed. I didn't believe him until I caught him outside her preschool. My mouth went dry. Preschool. That would have been when I was 4. Nathan, I said quietly. What if my mom knew? What if she knew and didn't stop him? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Because that question had already started to answer itself. I drove straight to Aunt Sherry's house. She lived across town, in a quiet neighborhood filled with dog walkers and garden flags. I'd always loved visiting her. She made the best banana bread and never judged me for pouring wine before 5. But that day when she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't smile. You found the letters, she said softly. I just nodded. Come in. Her living room was quiet, warm, familiar. The smell of cinnamon and old wood furniture. But it all felt wrong now, like a dream that's turned sour. Why didn't you tell me? I asked the moment I sat down. Why didn't anyone tell me? Sherry looked older than I'd ever seen her. Like all the years she'd been hiding this was suddenly showing on her face. I wanted to, she said. God, Anna, I wanted to 100 times. But your mother begged me not to. She said Evelyn had mental health issues. That she was paranoid. That she'd made it all up. I leaned forward. Do you believe that? Sherry's silence was answer enough. She sent me those letters in secret, she said. They stopped after a while. Thought maybe she moved on. Maybe she was safe. But then she vanished. And your mother said to let it go. But you didn't believe her. I couldn't, she whispered. I knew Evelyn. She wasn't crazy. She was scared. Of your dad. My voice broke. Did he ever hurt Mom? Or me? I don't know, Sherry said. But I know your mom changed after Evelyn left. She was quieter. Kept more to herself. She stopped seeing people, stopped going to church for a while. I think she was scared too, but of what? Or of who? I couldn't tell. I sat back, feeling the weight of every silence I'd grown up in. Every odd look. Every time my mom changed the subject or shut down a question about the past. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was protection. Or complicity. Maybe both. That night I didn't sleep. Nathan stayed with me. We didn't speak much. Just lay there, holding hands in the dark, each of us deep in our own thoughts. At 3 a.m. my phone lit up. A message from an unknown number. Stop digging. That was it. Just 2 words. But it sent a jolt through me like ice water. I showed it to Nathan. He stared at it for a moment, then said, We need to be careful. Do you think it's my dad? I think it's someone who knows what we've found. The next morning I confronted my mom again. This time I brought the letters. She didn't try to deny them. She just sat at the kitchen table, staring at her coffee, and said quietly, I thought he'd changed. You knew, I said. You knew Evelyn was scared. You knew what she thought he might do to me. And you let her go? I didn't let her go, she said. She left. Because she was terrified. My mom looked up at me then, and I saw something I hadn't expected. Shame, yes. But also deep, haunting sorrow. I was pregnant with Jake, she said. Your father threatened to take you from me if I didn't stop seeing Evelyn. He said I was choosing a friend over my family. And I was scared. I was stupid. I thought if I stayed quiet, he'd leave her alone. But he didn't, I said. No, she whispered. He didn't. That afternoon I called a lawyer. Then I called a reporter. I didn't know exactly what story we had yet. But I knew it started with a woman who vanished, a man with a long shadow, and a daughter who finally saw through the cracks. And I wasn't going to let it go. The reporter I contacted, Gillian Marsh, met me 2 days later at a public library near the Charleston waterfront. She was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed and soft-spoken, with a reputation for digging into cold cases and stories that no one else wanted to touch. I handed her the letters from Evelyn, along with scanned copies of the photo and my handwritten timeline. I told her everything, about the Thanksgiving dinner, about Nathan's discovery, about my mother's silence and my aunt's guilt. She listened quietly, taking notes. When I finished, she said, "Do you know if Evelyn ever filed a police report?" "I don't think so," I said. "But she did try to warn my aunt. She wrote things that, if they're true, should have been investigated." Gillian looked at me steadily. "If what she wrote is true, it means someone covered for your father. Maybe more than once. And that cover-up might go deeper than you realize." Those words lodged in my chest like a needle. Over the next week, Gillian began digging. She filed public record requests, searched old news articles, and made calls to people I never would have thought to contact. Evelyn's former co-workers, neighbors, even the principal at the preschool I'd attended in 1997. What she found shocked me. There had been a report filed. In March 1996, 4 months after Evelyn's last known letter. It wasn't made by Evelyn. It was made by a neighbor. A complaint about a man loitering outside Evelyn's apartment, looking in through windows. The man was described as mid-30s, Caucasian, broad build, military haircut. It matched my father's appearance at the time. But the report went nowhere. No charges were filed. No follow-up. And 3 weeks later, Evelyn resigned from her job at a dental office and disappeared completely. Her apartment was vacated. Her car left behind. No record of her leaving town. No bus or plane tickets. Just silence. Nathan and I drove to the old apartment building where she'd last lived. It had been converted into a law office now, but the bones of it were the same. Red brick, narrow windows, a fire escape curling like a rusted vine down the side. Standing there, I felt something cold settle into my bones. "She was here," I said quietly. "She packed up her life and left this place afraid." Nathan didn't say anything. He just took my hand and squeezed it. We were in this together, even if neither of us liked where it was going. That night my mother called me. "I heard from your father," she said, her voice shaky. "He's upset." "Good," I replied. "He says you're destroying the family." "I'm not destroying anything," I said. "I'm exposing it." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something I never expected to hear. "I'm ready to testify. If it comes to that." Gillian set up an interview with a private investigator who had experience reopening missing persons cases. He reviewed the letters and the neighbor's report and said bluntly, "If this woman's story is real, she didn't just run. She was pushed." He believed Evelyn might still be alive, but hiding. She might have changed her name, moved across the country, started over. Women do it all the time when they feel the system won't protect them. The idea that she could be alive gave me a hope I didn't know I needed. And a mission I wasn't ready to walk away from. We launched a social media campaign. Just one photo. Evelyn in that blue denim jacket, standing beside my mom in 1994. Captioned simply, "Do you know this woman? Evelyn Miller, Charleston, South Carolina, disappeared in 1996. We're looking for answers." Within a day, the post had 10,000 shares. By the end of the week, someone messaged Jillian, a woman in Tennessee. She said she'd seen Evelyn once, years ago, working at a women's shelter under a different name. She didn't remember exactly when, but she remembered the face. She helped me when I was pregnant and alone, the woman wrote. Her name wasn't Evelyn, but it was her. I know it. The lead was thin, but it was something. Nathan and I drove to Knoxville the next day. We showed Evelyn's photo to the staff at 3 shelters. One woman, an older volunteer with silver braids and a warm smile, looked at the photo and gasped. "That's Linda," she said. "She worked here in the early 2000s. Disappeared just like she came, without warning." We followed the thread. An old P.O. box in a rural town. A volunteer record under the name Linda Marks. No social security number. No ID copy. Just a phone number long disconnected. Still, it was the first real proof that Evelyn had been alive, at least years after vanishing. Back in Charleston, Jillian prepared her first article. It would be published in a regional investigative journal, but she was already in talks with larger outlets. The headline would read, "Vanished. What happened to Evelyn Miller?" I approved the final draft. But the night before publication, I received another anonymous message. No name, no sender. Just a photo attachment. It was a blurry picture of me and Nathan, taken through the window of our apartment. With the caption, "Some secrets should stay buried." The photo hit me like a punch. Taken through our living room window, it showed Nathan sitting on the couch, reading. I was in the background, folding laundry. Completely unaware. Completely vulnerable. The message was short. Some secrets should stay buried. I showed it to Nathan in silence. He stared at it for a long time, then said quietly, "We need to leave." We didn't leave town, but we did leave our apartment. For a few days, we stayed in a friend's guest room in Mount Pleasant. Nathan slept with his phone under his pillow. I jumped at every noise. We kept the curtains drawn, avoided routines, and checked the locks 3 times a night. Fear had a way of warping everything, even love. But strangely, we grew closer in that fear. Because we knew who we were afraid of. And what he was trying to hide. Jillian's article went live on a Tuesday morning. It wasn't just a story. It was a timeline, a case file, a narrative built from every scrap of truth we had. It included Evelyn's letters, the missing persons report, the shelter lead in Tennessee, and interviews with my mom and Aunt Sherry. But the part that hit hardest was the photo, the one from our family album. 3 women smiling in the sun, unaware that one of them would soon vanish, and another would spend her life pretending she hadn't. The article exploded. By noon it was trending regionally. By nightfall, it had been picked up by The Guardian's U.S. edition. The comments poured in. Some supportive, some horrifying, and one that stopped my heart. "I knew Evelyn. She's alive. She lives in Michigan now. Different name. But I'm sure it's her." Jillian followed the lead. Took 3 days. 3 long, breathless, sleepless days. And then she called me. "I found her," she said. I sat down, shaking. "She's alive." "Yes. She goes by Laura Kavanaugh now. She runs a bookstore in Traverse City. She's healthy. She's okay." I couldn't breathe. Nathan was beside me, gripping my hand so tight it hurt. "She wants to meet you," Jillian said. 1 week later, we flew to Michigan. I didn't know what I expected. A dramatic reunion. A tearful embrace. An apology for disappearing. What I got was something quieter. A small shop called Lake House Books, nestled between a coffee shop and an antique store. It smelled like dust and cedar and used paperbacks. And behind the counter was a woman in her 60s with soft gray eyes. She looked at me, then at Nathan, then back at me, and she smiled. "Anna," she said softly, "you look just like your mother did at your age." We sat in the back room on mismatched chairs, drinking weak coffee. She told me everything. How she'd met my father in college. How charming he was at first. Bright, confident, magnetic. But then came the control. The jealousy. The manipulation. How he isolated her from friends. From her own family. How she tried to leave, but he made sure she had nowhere to go. She said she never filed charges because she was afraid no one would believe her. And when she found out he'd married my mother, someone she once called a best friend, she was terrified. I didn't know what he was capable of, she said. But I knew he wouldn't let me stay close to your family. So I ran. Changed my name. I disappeared. And me? Yes. Why did you mention me in the letters? Why were you so afraid for me? She looked down. Because I knew what he'd done to me. And I saw how your mother looked at him. How she flinched when he raised his voice. I thought if she couldn't protect you, maybe someone else would. I wiped my eyes. She hadn't come to rescue me. She'd hoped someone else would. We spent 3 hours talking. About the past. About healing. About what it meant to survive. I asked her if she wanted to come back to tell her story publicly. To speak out. She shook her head. I've built a quiet life, she said. But I'll speak to the police if you need me to. And I'll tell them the truth. Every word. Back in Charleston, the fallout began. The police reopened Evelyn's case as an official missing person recovered, but also launched a secondary investigation into domestic intimidation and stalking tied to my father. He denied everything. Hired a lawyer. Claimed the letters were forged. But then more came forward. Women. Former employees. Old neighbors. And suddenly it wasn't just about Evelyn. It was about a pattern. History. A man who had built a perfect life on silence and fear. The wedding was postponed. Not because we were unsure, but because I needed to reclaim my life before building a new one. Nathan understood. He was the one who suggested we write our vows privately now, and save the public ceremony for a time when we could celebrate without shadows. And I did write them. One night after everything. I wrote. I promise to choose the truth, even when it's painful. I promise to build a life where no one has to disappear to feel safe. And I promise, most of all, to never bury what should be seen. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you. I told it not to shame anyone or to dwell in the past, but to remind you that sometimes the darkest truths hide in the most familiar places. If something in your family has never made sense. If you've been told not to ask questions, ask anyway. And if you need the strength to keep going, subscribe to this channel. Because I'll be here every week telling stories that matter. Stories like yours. Stories like mine.